Today, I was taking my daughter to see my parents. We were pulling into the I-Pass lane at the toll plaza when a black Dodge Charger suddenly swerved in front of me. He was trying to tailgate me to skip the toll. Luckily, my reflexes were quick. I slammed on the brakes. Once seeing he'd failed, the driver of the Dodge tried to reverse out of the lane. I immediately hit the gas, pulling forward just enough to box him in. "Daddy, why aren't we letting him out?" Coco asked curiously from her car seat in the back. I met her clear eyes in the rearview mirror and said seriously, "Because that car is trying to cheat, sweetie. If I let him out, he'll just go do it to someone else." "Coco, we should never be the kind of people who take advantage of others." She nodded, not quite understanding, but getting the gist of it. "Okay," she said, before looking back down at the toy in her hands. To make sure the guy learned his lesson, I laid on the horn a few times. A line of cars started to form behind us, all of them waiting on him. The driver of the black Dodge got out. He was a heavy-set, middle-aged man who walked straight to my window and started banging on it with his fist. I rolled the window down a crack. His face was a dark scowl. "Back the hell up and let me out. There's a line of cars behind me. I can't back up. This is an I-Pass lane. Don't tell me you don't have one." He started to argue, but I wasn't interested. I just rolled the window back up. That's when the cars behind us started honking too, a chorus of frustration. Someone leaned out their window and yelled, "Let's go. What's the holdup?" With everyone watching, he shot me a venomous look, got back in his car, and begrudgingly paid the toll in cash before peeling out. "I don't like that man," Coco whispered. "It's okay, Coco. People like him are rare. There are more good people in the world than bad," I reassured her softly. After we cleared the toll plaza, I noticed the black Dodge pulled over on the shoulder. The driver was waving at me, gesturing for me to pull over. I ignored him and merged onto the interstate. I was thinking about what to bring my parents when a familiar black shape flashed in my rearview mirror. It was the Dodge. He was flying, closing the distance to my bumper in seconds. He tailgated me, so closely I could see the man's scowling face perfectly in the mirror. Swallowing my anger, I changed lanes into the slower right lane, hoping he would just pass me and be on his way. But he followed me, sticking to my tail like glue. Just then, the Dodge suddenly accelerated, pulling up alongside me. The passenger side window rolled down, and a plastic water bottle flew out, slamming against my car door with a loud thump that made the whole car shudder. Coco screamed. I floored it, trying to create some distance, but he stayed right with me. "It's okay, baby, just hold on tight," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but my palms were slick with sweat. The black Dodge would swerve toward my bumper, then pull alongside me, trying to force me toward the guardrail on every curve. On a sharp end, he suddenly sped up, past me, and then, without warning, jerked the wheel to the right. My instincts took over. I slammed on the brakes. The tires shrieked against the asphalt, and the smell of burning rubber filled the air. The seatbelt dug into Coco, making her cough. Her favorite toy slipped from her hands and rolled under the seat. "Daddy, I am scared." The tremor in my daughter's voice was like a knife in my heart. "Don't be. Trust me," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. My back was soaked with cold sweat. Through the rearview mirror, I could see Coco huddled in her seat, tears welling up in her eyes. Then the most terrifying thing happened. The heavy-set driver leaned halfway out of his window. He hurled a heavy, stainless steel travel mug directly at my windshield. With an explosive crack, a spiderweb of fractures instantly spread across the glass, shattering my view of the road. Shards of safety glass rained down on the dashboard. I had to lean sideways just to see the highway ahead. This guy's a psycho. I was seething, but I had to force myself to stay calm. We were already doing 80. One wrong move, and we were dead. Just as I was trying to move into the emergency lane to get away, a fully loaded semi-truck appeared in the left lane. Seeing his chance, the driver of the Dodge jerked the wheel toward me again. There was nowhere to go. I stomped on the brake with all my might, the steering wheel vibrating violently in my hands. The piercing squeal of tires, Coco's terrified scream, and the deafening crunch of metal all blended into one horrifying sound. Crunch! The violent impact threw us forward as the airbags deployed with a concussive force. My world spun, and for a split second I blacked out. Three Coco's heart-wrenching sobs dragged me back from the void. The car hadn't flipped, but the front end was completely mangled, the windshield a mosaic of shattered glass. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burnt plastic and the chemical scent of the airbags. I managed to lift a hand to my face. It came away sticky with blood. Ignoring my own injuries, I twisted around to look at the back seat. Coco, are you okay? Daddy. Her small face was streaked with tears, and there was a nasty scrape on her left cheek, but the child's safety seat had held her securely. She reached a small hand toward me, held back by the straps. It's okay, baby, Daddy's here. I fought against the throbbing pain in my head, keeping my voice as even as I could. Now listen to me. Unbuckle your seatbelt and climb over to the guardrail, okay? Just like we've seen on TV. Coco was sobbing, but she nodded obediently. She expertly unbuckled herself, clutched her teddy bear, and shakily climbed out of the mangled car door, scrambling to safety behind the guardrail. Seeing her safe, the crushing weight on my chest eased just a little. That's when I noticed smoke starting to curl into the cabin. The burning smell was getting stronger. I had to get out, but when I tried to move, a searing pain shot up from my right leg. My foot was pinned under the twisted metal of the dashboard. I couldn't move an inch. Every slight motion sent waves of agony through me. Cold sweat, mixed with blood, dripped from my forehead onto my shirt. I forced myself to calm down and try to pry the dashboard off with my hands, but it was jammed solid. Thankfully, in the instant before the crash, the car's onboard assistance system had automatically dialed 911. We were just past the city limits. Help should be on the way soon. I leaned back against the seat, exhausted, my eyes fixed on the small figure behind the guardrail. Coco was hugging her bear, watching me with wide, tear-filled eyes from a safe distance. I managed a weak smile and mouthed the words, "Don't be scared." Lying there, I watched my daughter and counted the seconds, praying for the sirens. For I fought through the pain, counting the seconds, praying for help to arrive. I had just reached 17 when the driver of the black Dodge, which had flipped onto its side, somehow managed to crawl out. Blood was streaming from a gash on his forehead as he limped toward me. "You son of a bitch," he roared, slamming his fist on the crumpled hood of my car. "If you hadn't been such a smart-ass at the toll plaza, this never would have happened. You're not walking away from this today, you motherfucker." Rage boiled inside me. You try to kill me and my daughter, and you won't blame me? Weaving through traffic, throwing things on the interstate. Scum like you shouldn't even have a license. You think there's no consequences for what you do. That pushed him over the edge. He ripped open my driver's side door and started swinging, his fists raining down on me. With my leg trapped, all I could do was raise my arms to protect my head. Each blow sent black spots across my vision. "I'll kill you," he screamed between punches. "Teach you to mind your own damn business. Teach you to get in my way." "Daddy!" Coco's cry pierced through the assault. I forced my swollen eyes open and saw her throwing her beloved teddy bear at the man with all her might. "You're a bad man. Stop hurting my daddy." The man spun around and backhanded her across the face. But Coco, impossibly, latched onto his wrist with her teeth, biting down hard. He howled in pain and, in a fit of pure rage, kicked her squarely in the stomach. Coco's tiny body crumpled to the pavement. She was shaking, not even crying anymore, just convulsing on the ground. She tried to push herself up, but collapsed again, her small hands clutching her belly. 5 in that moment, the last thread of my sanity snapped. After my wife died, Coco became my entire world. I thought of every morning she'd crawl into my bed and whisper, "Good morning, Daddy." I thought of how she learned to braid her own hair, so young, just because she was afraid of making me late for work. She was so good, so gentle. And now, what had she ever done to deserve this? Adrenaline surged through me. I ignored the tearing pain in my leg and ripped it free from the wreckage. Blood instantly soaked through my jeans, but I couldn't feel it. I launched myself at the man, tackling him to the ground, and pounded his face with one punch after another. "You bastard, if I die here today, I'm taking you with me." He tried to fight back, but I was numb to the pain. I grabbed his throat, slamming his head against the asphalt again and again. "My daughter is 5 years old. What did she do to you? You animal. I have never, ever laid a hand on her. And you dare to touch her." Blood splattered across my face. I couldn't tell if it was his or mine. I didn't stop until he went limp, his hands weakly trying to shield his head, but still I kept hitting him. The police arrived quickly. It took 2 officers to pull me off the man. I shook them off and staggered over to the guardrail, gathering Coco into my arms. "Daddy, it hurts." Her face was as white as a sheet. Every word seemed to take all the strength she had left. Her faint voice was a needle in my heart. I could feel her whole body trembling in my arms. Her once bright eyes were dull and clouded with pain. "It's okay, baby, Daddy's here," I choked out, stroking her back. Just then, the man started screaming his lies to the police. "Officers, thank God you're here. This guy's insane. He ran me off the road on purpose, tried to kill me. I was just defending myself. I didn't have the energy to care about his lies." I rushed toward the paramedics who had just arrived, holding Coco out to them. "Please, help my daughter. She's hurt badly." A paramedic gently took Coco from my arms. The moment she left my embrace, the world started spinning. The blood loss from my leg was catching up to me. My vision blurred. The last thing I saw was Coco's small form being carefully placed on a stretcher before I collapsed, and everything went dark. 6 weeks later, Officer Evans came to the hospital to give me an update on the investigation. High-definition traffic cameras had recorded the entire incident. The man, Rick Wallace, had been officially arrested and charged with reckless endangerment and aggravated assault. Because of the vicious nature of the crime, he was facing serious time if he couldn't get a plea deal involving our family's cooperation. I stood on my crutches outside the ICU window, my right leg just barely able to bear weight. Coco was lying in the hospital bed, a tangle of tubes connected to her small body. That kick had ruptured her spleen and caused severe internal bleeding. The emergency surgery saved her life, but a post-op infection had left her fighting for it ever since. The doctor said that even if she recovered, she would need lifelong care and would never be able to run and play like other kids. My mother put a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Son, you have to eat something." My father stood beside her, his eyes red and raw. For 6 weeks, they had driven down from their home, staying by our side day and night. They seemed to have aged 10 years overnight. "Just so you're aware," Officer Evans added, "standard procedure means his lawyer and family will likely contact you about a settlement in exchange for a lighter sentence recommendation." He paused, "But the choice is entirely yours." I stared through the glass at Coco, her small chest rising and falling in time with the ventilator. I remembered the day before the accident, how excited she was to show her grandparents the new dance she'd learned. "I understand," I said, my voice hoarse. "Thank you, Officer Evans." The man's snarling face from the dashcam footage, the image of Coco crumpled on the ground, and the sight of her lying in that bed played on a loop in my head. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. The sun was shining outside, but my daughter was trapped in a cold, sterile room. I gently pressed my palm against the cool glass. "I will never forgive him," I whispered, the words quiet but absolute. "He has to pay." 2 days later, the man's wife and her brother stormed into the hospital wing. The woman was in her 40s, dressed head to toe in designer logos, clutching a crocodile skin handbag. She held her chin so high you'd think she was here to grant a favor, not ask for one. Without a word, she pulled a document from her bag and slapped it down on the empty chair beside me. "Sign it. Let's not waste each other's time." She crossed her arms, looking me up and down. "My husband was a little impulsive that day, I'll grant you that. But you're both still alive, aren't you? The doctor said the kid's out of danger. The most we're willing to offer is $10,000. I fought to control my fury and pushed the settlement agreement back at her. "Get out." Her brother, a skinny guy with a buzz cut who looked like a career thug, stepped forward and sneered. "Look, my brother-in-law has friends in the court system. If you don't sign, this case could drag on for years. We'll bankrupt you with legal fees. Sign now, you get the money today. It's a win-win. A win-win." I shot to my feet. When your brother-in-law was running me off the road, smashing my windshield, and kicking my daughter, was he thinking about a win-win? "Hey, it takes two to tango." The woman shrieked, her voice suddenly piercing. A few other patients' families in the hallway turned to look. "Who knows what you did to provoke him? I heard your wife died. Maybe you're one of those professional scam artists, using your kid to get payday. You see someone with a little money and decide to cash in." Her brother took it a step further, pulling out his phone and starting to record me. "Hey everyone, get a look at this guy. A professional con man, trying to milk the system." But the thing that broke me was when he turned the phone's camera toward the ICU. And this little brat in here. What did you say? I lunged forward and grabbed him by the collar. He shoved me back, jabbing a finger in my face. I'm telling you, if you don't sign this today, you and your parents better watch your backs. Even if your daughter gets out of here, we have 100 ways to make her life hell. You think any school will want her after this? You lay a hand on my daughter, I swear to God. Weeks of pent-up rage exploded. I drove my fist into his face. He staggered back into the wall, blood gushing from his nose. The woman shrieked and leaped at me, her sharp nails aiming for my eyes. You hit my brother. I'll kill you. Her brother wiped the blood from his nose, grabbed a metal chair from the hallway, and swung it at my head. I dodged, and the chair crashed against the wall with a deafening clang. The three of us became a tangled mess of flying fists and furious screams that echoed down the hospital corridor. A couple of security guards ran over, struggling to pull us apart. The woman, her hair a mess, was still screaming. You just wait. I'll make sure your family can't live in this city. You will regret this day for the rest of your life. Her brother clutched his bloody nose, his eyes filled with venom. This isn't over. A week before the trial, my lawyer, Mr. Davies, came to the hospital. He checked the hallway to make sure no one was listening before lowering his voice. They sold their house and their car. Word is they've pulled some strings, made a connection with someone influential. I'm hearing they're going to plead temporary insanity to get a reduced sentence. He handed me a document. It was a copy of a psychiatric evaluation from a private clinic. This report is almost certainly fabricated, but there's a good chance the court will accept it. Mr. Davies sighed. You need to be prepared. The final sentence could be much lighter than we'd expect. I looked through the glass at Coco, her chest barely moving with the rhythm of the ventilator. Her favorite teddy bear sat on the bedside table, the one I'd promised to buy her for her birthday, right before the crash. October 28th, trial day. I walked into the courtroom with my crutches, the cast on my right leg still in place. When Rick Wallace was led in by two bailiffs, he first glanced at his wife and brother-in-law in the gallery and gave them a subtle nod. Then he turned to me and smirked. A cold, knowing smirk. All rise, the bailiff announced. The judge banged his gavel. The prosecution may begin. The prosecutor stood. The defendant, Rick Wallace, on September 15th, 2025, on Interstate 94, engaged in acts of reckless driving, including repeatedly forcing another vehicle off the road and throwing projectiles at said vehicle, resulting in a major traffic collision. Following the collision, Mr. Wallace then violently assaulted the victim and his 5-year-old daughter, causing grievous bodily harm. These facts are substantiated by highway patrol footage, crime scene photographs, and medical reports. When it was the defense attorney's turn, a man in a sharp suit and gold-rimmed glasses stood up. Your Honor, my client was suffering from a temporary psychotic break induced by a sudden spike in his blood pressure. We have a diagnostic report from a reputable specialist to confirm this. Under Penal Code Section 28. Objection. Mr. Davies was on his feet instantly. This report was issued more than a month after the incident, and the clinic in question has been sanctioned multiple times for issuing fraudulent medical documents. The judge looked from one to the other. The admissibility of this evidence will be determined by the court in deliberation. But the most disgusting moment came during the cross-examination. Wallace's lawyer had the audacity to say, the incident was triggered when the plaintiff made an illegal lane change, causing my client extreme emotional distress. Furthermore, the plaintiff's daughter is now in stable condition, meaning no irreparable harm was done. I couldn't control myself. I pushed myself up, leaning on the table for support. My daughter is 5 years old. She had a ruptured spleen, and she is still lying in the ICU. You call that not irreparable? The plaintiff will control himself, the judge snapped, slamming his gavel. After a long day of arguments, the judge finally delivered the verdict. The defendant, Rick Wallace, is found guilty of reckless endangerment, for which he is sentenced to 1 year in prison. He is also found guilty of aggravated assault, for which he is sentenced to 18 months. The sentences will be served consecutively, for a total of 2 years. It was lighter than I'd hoped, but at least it was prison time. At least he was off the streets. I felt a small, dark sense of relief. For 2 years, at least, Coco would be safe. But as the bailiffs were leading him away, He twisted around and looked directly at me. His face was contorted into a chilling, triumphant sneer. 2 years, he mouthed, his voice a low, venomous whisper just loud enough for me to hear. That'll fly by. He leaned closer to the bailiff. When your little girl gets out of the hospital, you tell her Uncle Rick will be sure to pay her a visit. Watching them drag him away, a cold dread washed over me. That wasn't remorse. It was a promise. A threat. This feud was far from over, and the law wasn't going to be enough to end it. I sat in the hallway outside the ICU all night, watching the sun come up. As the morning light streamed through the blinds, casting stripes across the floor, I made my decision. In this world, to protect the things you love, sometimes the good man has to be more ruthless than the evil one. 3 days later, I submitted my resignation to the design firm where I'd worked for 8 years. The HR manager tried to talk me out of it, but I just shook my head. At the bank, the teller asked me 3 times before processing the transaction, "Sir, are you absolutely sure you want to close out all your certificates of deposit?" I took my life savings of $80,000, added the $35,000 from the settlement, and put the cashier's check for $115,000 in my mother's hand. "Mom, take Coco down to Florida to recover. The climate is better there." My mother's hand trembled. She refused to take it. My father pulled me aside, his eyes red. "Son, don't do anything stupid." 1.5 years. Over 500 days. After Coco was discharged, she became quiet and withdrawn. She would still tidy her toys and do the reading exercises I gave her, but she never skipped or danced around the house anymore. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear muffled sobs from her room. I'd open the door to find her curled up in a corner, drenched in a cold sweat. "Daddy, is the fat man going to come find us?" She would ask me that, her big eyes filled with a terror that never left. Every time I heard that question, it felt like a boulder was crushing my chest, making it impossible to breathe. During that 1.5 years, I spent my time networking at bars and dinners. I met with everyone from city council members to county supervisors, from corrections officers to the warden himself. I drank until I gave myself a bleeding ulcer 3 times. The worst bout landed me in the hospital for 2 weeks. Whenever I felt like I couldn't go on, I would look at the picture of Coco on my phone. It was from her kindergarten recital before the accident. She was smiling like the sun itself. Last night, as I raised another glass of whiskey, the man across the table gently put his hand on my wrist. "That's enough. Your daughter. I heard what happened." His old friend, a 20-year veteran in the state prison system, had finally agreed to help. "There's an inmate being transferred to our facility next month. Get ready." Leaving the steakhouse, I walked to the riverfront and just stood there for a long time. The night air was cold, but the fire that had been burning inside me for over 500 days finally saw a flicker of hope. 13 months later, I passed through 3 sets of steel doors and waited in a small, sterile meeting room. When a man was brought in, shackled at his hands and feet, I noticed the look in his eyes. He was already gone. There was no life left in them. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice a dry rasp as he sat down. I pushed a photograph across the table. "Do you know this man?" He glanced at it. "Heard of him. He's getting out soon." $70,000, I said. For the first time, his eyes showed a flicker of something. "What are you talking about?" "You've got nothing to lose," I said, lowering my voice. "You take care of Rick Wallace for me, and I'll give your parents $70,000 in cash. Enough for them to retire on." He laughed, a dead, hollow sound. "Why should I trust you? I could give you $10,000 up front." I pulled an envelope from my jacket. "The rest will be delivered to your parents personally after it's done. You can write them a letter. Tell them it's an old friend repaying a debt." He was silent for a long time, so long the guard started checking his watch. "My execution is next month," he finally said. "Not enough time. That's why it has to happen inside," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "I'm sure you can find a way." He fell silent again, this time for even longer. When he finally looked up, his eyes were hard as stone. "Make it 80. 10,000 for my sister." "Done." He extended his cuffed hands, and we shook across the table. "Remember," he growled, "if I die and you screw over my family." "Don't worry," I said, taking back the photo. "I'm a man of my word." As the guard came to lead him away, he turned back. "Why him? Why does he have to die?" I looked at the dead man walking and said softly, "He hurt my daughter." He paused, and a look of understanding crossed his face. Got it. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind him. The corridor was long, and my footsteps echoed in the empty space. 14. My name is Jack Russo. I'm 30 years old, with a name so common it's practically invisible. And I'm on death row. My parents run a tiny convenience store in a small town, maybe 200 square feet. The shelves are packed so tight you have to turn sideways to get down the aisle. They've worked in that store for 30 years, saving every nickel and dime. That, plus the money I saved from 10 years of backbreaking work on construction sites, hauling cement, tying rebar, was just enough to scrape together a down payment for a small house. I thought I was finally getting somewhere. I married a girl from the next town over, Lisa. On our wedding day, my mom cried she was so happy. My dad, who never drinks, had half a bottle of bourbon. They thought the Russo family line was finally secure. The marriage lasted 79 days. It was raining hard one afternoon, so we got sent home from the site early. I walked in covered in mud and heard noises coming from the bedroom. Our bedroom. I pushed the door open and saw Lisa in our bed, the bed my parents had bought us, with another man. The red comforter my mother had picked out was tangled on the floor. The guy jumped out of the window without even grabbing his pants. Lisa didn't even flinch. She just lit a cigarette and blew a smoke ring. That down payment, she said. Already spent it. It was the down payment on my boyfriend's new truck. A loser like you? You were born to be a chump. My eyes fell on the brand new fruit knife on the dresser. My mom had bought it for us. The next thing I knew, it was in her chest. Blood splattered on our wedding photo, hanging on the wall, dripping slowly down the glass. As I watched the light fade from her eyes, I felt a strange sense of peace. The only thing that hurt was thinking of my parents, how devastated they would be when they got the news. My mom came to visit me in county jail. Through the thick glass, she cried so hard I thought she would collapse. My stupid boy, why didn't you just leave? It's only money. We could have made more money. My dad stood behind her, his hair completely white. It hadn't been the week before. The night I got my execution date, I didn't sleep a wink. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just worried about my parents. Then, on a gray afternoon, everything changed. A stranger came to visit me. He said his name was Chun, and he was willing to pay $70,000 for me to take care of someone for him. When I heard the number, I hesitated. That was enough money for my parents to live comfortably for the rest of their lives. $80,000, I heard myself say, and $10,000 for my sister. He didn't even blink. Done. The guy he wanted me to handle, the fat one, was a real piece of work. I'd heard the stories. Ran a family off the highway, kicked a 5-year-old girl so hard he nearly killed her, and only got 2 years. He'd walk around the yard bragging, when I get out, I'm going to finish the job on that family. Scum like him were a waste of oxygen. Because I was on death row, I was in a segregated unit. I only interacted with the general population during yard time and showers. The shower room was a long rectangle with 8 shower heads on each side. The last one was in a blind spot. I watched for 5 days. The fat guy always went to that last stall at 6 p.m. by himself and stayed for 20 minutes. On the 6th day, I went into the showers early. Through the steam, I saw his bloated figure humming a tune as he headed for his usual spot. The water started running. He tilted his head back, eyes closed, his massive gut rising and falling with each breath. I moved toward him without a sound. From a hidden pocket in my waistband, I pulled out the handle of a toothbrush I had sharpened to a deadly point. Just as he was lathering his hair with shampoo, I lunged. I wrapped one arm around his thick neck, and with the other, I drove the sharpened plastic deep into his carotid artery. Next time, try being a decent human being, I whispered in his ear. He thrashed like a fish out of water, a gurgling sound catching in his throat. The hot water mixed with his blood, turning the floor a pale pink. I held him tight, feeling the life drain out of him. When he finally stopped moving, I turned on the shower head next to him and carefully washed my hands. Watching the bloody water swirl down the drain, I suddenly remembered my father teaching me how to write my name. Jack, he'd said, 1 letter at a time. That's how you live your life. 1 step at a time. Too bad in this life I took a wrong turn. I heard the frantic footsteps of the guards running down the hall. I smoothed out my jumpsuit and waited calmly for the click of the handcuffs. I dropped Coco off with my parents. She wrapped her arms around my neck and wouldn't let go. You have to come visit, Daddy. Her voice was muffled against my shoulder. I kissed the top of her head. As soon as I'm done with some work, I'll come get you. My mother took her from me, and my father silently slipped a box of homemade cookies into my suitcase. Make sure you eat, he said, his voice thick. Back in my empty house, I began the long wait. Days were a blur of mechanically eating and sleeping. The rest of the time, I just sat on the living room couch, staring at my phone. The ticking of the wall clock was deafening in the silence, each second stretching into an eternity. On the evening of the 7th day, the screen finally lit up. A text from an unknown number. The contract has been fulfilled. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for 2 years and sank back into the sofa cushions. The agony was finally over. The next morning, Officer Evans and 2 younger officers were at my door. He looked at me for a long moment before he spoke. Rick Wallace had an accident in the showers. He was stabbed in the neck with a sharpened piece of plastic. I picked up my coffee cup, my hand perfectly steady. Like I told you, officer, what goes around comes around. His wife is insisting you hired someone to kill him. Does she have any proof? I took a sip. I seem to recall her brother mentioning they had friends in the justice system. Where are they now? Officer Evans was quiet for a moment, then changed the subject. How's your daughter? She's recovering. Doing well. I set my cup down. If there's nothing else, I have to go pick her up. After they left, I stood at the window and watched their car drive away. I knew it was over. 17, I shouldn't have been surprised when the sister and brother burst into my house that afternoon. The woman lunged at me like a wild animal, but her brother managed to hold her back. It was you. It had to be you, she screamed. I did recently wire some money to my parents, I said calmly. Is that a crime? You paid off that death row inmate, she shrieked. I walked slowly toward her, leaned in, and whispered in her ear, where's your proof? You said you had connections. Where are they now? I watched the color drain from her face and gave her the same cold smirk her husband had given me in court. Her brother suddenly pulled out a switchblade. I didn't move an inch. Use that, and you're looking at 10 years minimum. Your sister already lost her husband. You want her to lose her brother, too? The knife clattered to the floor. The woman collapsed in a heap, sobbing hysterically. Get out, I said, opening the front door. I stood in the now quiet living room as the setting sun cast a long shadow across the floor. I walked into Coco's room. Her small bed was neatly made, the old teddy bear sitting on her pillow. The next day, I drove to the next county over. As promised, I had $80,000 in cash packed in a plain duffel bag. Jack Russo's parents lived in an old house on the edge of town, the faded sign for their convenience store still hanging over the door. His mother, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair, answered the door. The small living room behind her was modest but tidy. A family photo hung on the wall. In it, Jack was just a teenager with a shy smile. Ma'am, I'm a friend of Jack's, I said, placing the duffel bag on their small kitchen table. He loaned me some money a while back to start business. This is me paying him back with interest. The old woman's hands trembled as she unzipped the bag. When she saw the stacks of cash, tears streamed down her face. That boy, he left us a letter before he passed. What did he say? I asked softly. He said the money was clean, that we should use it and not worry. She wiped her eyes. He said he was sorry he couldn't be there to take care of us in our old age. I looked at the smiling boy in the photograph. If he could do it all over again, would he have chosen a different path? As I was leaving, Jack's father insisted I take a bag of sweet potatoes from their garden. These were always Jack's favorite, the old man murmured. On the drive home, I couldn't stop thinking that maybe there's a monster inside all of us. Some people will just never have a reason to let it out. 18 on a crisp autumn morning, I took Coco to the cemetery on the outskirts of town. The morning dew was still fresh on the ground, and the stone paths were covered in golden leaves. Coco was wearing her favorite red dress, holding a bouquet of white lilies. Will Mommy like the flowers I picked? She asked, her little face turned up to mine. She'll love them, I said, squeezing her hand. Lilies were her favorite. My wife's headstone stood quietly in a peaceful corner of the cemetery. Coco carefully placed the flowers in front of the stone and used her small hand to wipe away a bit of dust from the picture. Hi, Mommy. Daddy and I came to see you, she said in a tiny voice. I'm much taller now, and I can even braid my own hair. Daddy says I do it better than he does. I knelt beside her, looking at the face that would be forever young. We're doing okay, I said softly. Coco is a brave little girl now. You don't have to worry. The cemetery was silent except for the whisper of the wind through the pine trees. Coco pulled a small seashell from her pocket, one we'd found on a trip to the beach. Mommy, I brought the sound of the ocean for you, she said, pressing the shell against the cold stone. Now you can hear the waves, too. The ocean is so pretty, Mommy. It's so blue, and it goes on forever. Sunlight filtered through the trees, dappling the headstone with light. For a moment, I could almost see my wife smile, hear her gentle voice saying, "You've taken such good care of our daughter." Coco remembered something else and pulled a drawing from her other pocket. Mommy, I drew our family. This is you, this is Daddy, and this is me. We're all smiling. In the drawing, 3 stick figures held hands in a field of flowers under a pink sky with a heart-shaped sun. It was childish, but it was full of love. I stayed there for a long time, silently telling her everything that had happened. When I got to the part about my final choice, a single leaf drifted down and landed softly on the headstone, as if in gentle reply. As we were leaving, Coco turned and waved. Bye, Mommy. We'll come see you again soon. I'll be good and listen to Daddy. 19. 3 months later, we made a new home in a small coastal town in Florida. The house wasn't big, but you could see the ocean from the living room window. Coco's room was filled with her drawings, the windowsill lined with seashells. Every morning, we'd walk along the beach, collecting the shells the tide had left behind. Coco would always run ahead, her little bucket full of treasures. Her laughter was bright and clear again, and the nightmares had stopped. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, I taught her how to fly a kite. Watching her run across the sand, the kite trailing behind her, her dress fluttering in the sea breeze, I finally felt a sense of peace I thought I'd lost forever. Daddy, the kite is so high, she yelled with delight. Do you think Mommy can see it from heaven? Yeah, I said, looking up at the endless blue sky. I think she can. She's always watching us. As the sun began to set, we sat on the sand and watched the sky turn brilliant shades of orange and pink. Coco leaned against me, pointing at the clouds. Daddy, doesn't that one look like Mommy smiling? The evening settled in, the water shimmering in the twilight. A lighthouse in the distance began to blink, guiding the boats back to shore. Time to go home, I said softly. But Coco shook her head. Just a little longer, Daddy. I like listening to the waves. So we sat there, listening to the rhythm of the tide, watching the stars appear one by one. The gentle ocean breeze washed over us, carrying the salty air and the promise of a new beginning. Later that night, I carried a sleeping Coco home on my back. Her small hand were resting on my shoulder, her breathing soft and even. The streetlights cast our long shadow on the pavement behind us. The sound of the ocean was a constant, soothing murmur, like a lullaby that would never end. I knew, then, that the long winter was finally over. Spring had arrived.